And welcome to the third of our town council debates sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Greater Hartford and West Hartford Community Interactive for the 2021 municipal election. I'm Carol Mulready, a member of the Greater Hartford League, which is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government by all its citizens. I will serve as moderator of this debate among candidates running for a seat on the town council. I am pleased to be joined here for our virtual event by Jennifer Evans, our partner at WHCI, West Hartford Public Television and Interactive. Our League of Women Voters screener is Cassie Bachman, and our two timers for this evening are David Pettyjohn and Libby Switek. Most importantly, we welcome our group of candidates running for town council for this third debate. They are in order of the questions that the lottery. Ben Wenograd, who is a Democrat and incumbent. Rick Bush, who is a Connecticut Party candidate and is a non-incumbent. Next is Alberto Cortes, who is a Republican candidate, non-incumbent. And then Roni Rodman, who is a Connecticut Party candidate and a non-incumbent. And Carol Blank, who is a Democrat and a, excuse me, an incumbent. So welcome to all of you. We're very pleased to have you here and joining us for this event and for all the effort that you put into being part of the democratic process and running for. We refer you to the WHCTV candidate profiles, which will be up very shortly on all of these candidates, and also to the League of Women Voters election site, which is vote411.org. And on that site, the candidates have been uploading their photos, their little biography, and responses to questions. So those are written responses. So a short review of what we are going to be doing, the format for this evening. It's conducted in a modified cumulative time format, which allows the candidates to speak without having a 1-minute time frame to answer a question, and just freely elaborate, and then also rebut a statement by someone else if he or she so chooses. Each candidate will have approximately 8 minutes of response time during the debate discussion. And in addition to prepared questions that the League has, we will take questions from the audience that writes in questions for us. The audience is encouraged to submit written questions on the Q&A tab at the bottom of the Zoom screen. And our questions person will screen them to avoid duplication and check for appropriateness for this municipal office. We do ask that the questions be directed to all the candidates. They should not be directed to single candidates. Candidates have been encouraged to keep their answers short so that we can get to a number of questions rather than having long answers and repeated comments on the same topic unnecessarily. Our timers will let the candidates know when they've reached 2 minutes in speaking on one topic, if just to let them know that they have gone that long. Each round of questions is initiated by the moderator, and as I said, the candidates are encouraged to rebut if they so choose. This is the first municipal election season during which we've had to use Zoom. A lot of you have used Zoom, but as you probably have learned during the course of this COVID season, long season, the 18 months, that we plan for everything to go smoothly, but once in a while, something does go wrong. We hope we will have a very smooth evening here this evening. Lastly, the candidates have 2 minutes for a closing statement, and the order of precedence for speaking was determined by lottery. So now it is my pleasure to go to the questions. And our first question is going to go to Ben Wenograd, and it is, how do you think COVID money coming into West Hartford should be used, and what's your anticipation of its effect on the tax burden?
Thank you very much, Carol. Thank you. First, let me start off to the league, to West Hartford Community Interactive, to all your volunteers tonight, and to everybody who's watching tonight or on tape later. Appreciate your interest in our town. So the COVID money, and there was the money that came in sort of initially, specifically for COVID relief. We did a really meticulous job in town of keeping track of spending. Our administration jumped in from day one, knowing that any money we'd get back from the feds would have to be accounted for. And so they counted every paperclip. So whatever money we have received that we spent, we got the money back on that sort of COVID relief. For the new money, for the ARPA money coming in, I think we're getting $25 million or so, and there are restrictions on how we can use it. But one thing we're certainly going to have to do is put that money toward infrastructure, long-term planning, as opposed to quick fixes for the operating expenses of our budget. It is one-time money. We have a couple of years to use it, but it's not something that's going to repeat. So if we spent the money on operating expenses, we'd be building a hole for ourselves in the budget. In terms of those long-term plans, certainly the water issues that we have in town are going to have to be priority one. Those are pressing. We all went through the impact of the storms, and as I'm sure Rick will talk about as much as he can, there are greater problems too in terms of our infrastructure dealing with water. So that'll be top of the list. But then we also hope to engage the public in a good discussion as to how we can grow our town, do economic development, do really innovative ways to grow our town, grow our community, and make the best use possible. So there'll be lots more conversations, and I really encourage everybody to sort of chip in with their great ideas.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? No. Rick, I see that you are unmuted. Are you ready?
Oh, yeah, I'm always ready. Be happy to jump in on that. So Ben is correct. There are some significant infrastructure issues that are going to be extremely expensive as we move forward. And any money that we get that we can offset some of those costs, it'll directly reduce the tax burden to the citizens in town. So the separation of stormwater from the sanitary sewer is going to be a very significant issue coming up. I've spent a lot of time, and I'll talk more about it. So I don't want to spend too much time on this particular issue. But the other thing that I think we should continue to do is to keep that town center, the traffic patterns the way they are. I think we should spend some of that money to try to implement some of those on a more permanent basis. I think our restaurants in town are really the big draw. We've, one of the best town centers in the Northeast, and I think we should spend some of the money keeping that a vibrant community asset.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Cortes.
Yeah, so, my thought with the COVID relief money is, what we realized in COVID, that there are some people that were impacted, and it's the most vulnerable, as usual, with access to whether it's Wi-Fi, the school systems, we're now talking about ventilation, so you want safer schools. So I think some of that relief money should go to that infrastructure, getting our schools safer for our kids, the most vulnerable. But another population that was impacted heavily was the seniors. I work at our church office, and we have our shut-ins, and everybody became a shut-in. But then you realize some people were not technology savvy, So how do we, so can we use that money? So my thought is to use that money to bring a senior center kind of home, kind of create that option. So they have that technology piece, give kind of access to the stuff that they rely on the senior center for. I feel that, that population was impacted heavily. And I think a lot of people forgot that, so I think that, some of that money could be allocated for that. I'm sure we can come up with creative ways of doing things to address those issues. And then the other thing is food insecurities. There are families that were impacted the amount of families that have food insecurities have increased in West Hartford. We see the impact on it because not everyone was laid off. Some people had the hours reduced. So some people didn't qualify for some of this funding that was out there. So so utilize that money to help with some of those food insecurities. So those are some of the things that I would do with that COVID relief fund.
Thank you, Mr. Cortes. Anyone else? All right, then we'll move on to our next question, which will go to Mr. Bush.
Carol, I'd like to respond.
Oh, okay, Mrs. Blank, okay.
Thank you very much. So first of all, I want to thank WHCI and the League of Women Voters of Greater Hartford for hosting this debate. And to you, Carol, for being the moderator. You're great at these things, as well as to my fellow panelists, and of course, the listening audience, as well as our timekeepers, because you all play a very important role. And I'd like to answer the question by just sort of piggybacking on Ben, not to repeat what he said, but we have done some very good things with the ARPA money that's coming in. And in addition, we all know the impact of our IT infrastructure in terms of the impact that it had on not only the students, but town staff with everybody working virtually. So this will go to improve that, as well as some of the infrastructure and improving our parks and recreational facilities, which we learned during COVID that many of us needed to get out because we were just so housebound with everybody in the house. And so I feel as though that money needs to be used so that we can build sustainability over a period of time and not just a quick fix because we have this huge amount of money coming in. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Rodman, do you have any comments on this particular one?
So the one thing that I would add is, currently I'm one of the PTO presidents over at King Philip Middle School, and they have an immediate need for basically tents so the kids during inclement weather can go outside. And I agree with actually what everyone else had said about all the programs, but sometimes with this money, you want to see an immediate response and getting these tents, rental tents basically, so these kids can go outside would be an immediate response that we can do with this money and allow these kids to have, room to move and be outside. So that's all I really needed to add.
All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Bush, the next question goes to you first. What are your thoughts on balancing our needs for services versus controlling property taxes?
That is ultimately probably the best question that you can ask in this situation. I think in West Hartford, the whole idea of our town is service-based. I mean, many people come here for the educational system. We do have a vibrant system that helps special needs students. I know that we're working hard to keep our senior citizens in affordable housing. The balancing act is really where the difficulty lies when it comes to the budget on an annual basis, because you want to provide services, but at the same time, you need to be responsible with how you spend money. It's without getting into the weeds, which I'm really not even qualified at this point to get into the weeds. I don't participate in the budget discussions currently, but, I definitely would take a more conservative approach. I would try to be more efficient maybe with the use of money. And I do understand that some things have to be cut, but at the same time, you don't want to take away any quality of life issues. You don't want to provide anybody with any negative issues for quality life. So it's a tough question. It's a tough decision. I'm ready to take that on though.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Winograd, I see your mic is off. Would you like to respond? Your mic is,
Oh,
you are not muted. So would you like to respond? So I'm trying to figure out who wants to speak next
no,
by looking at the mic.
right. No, I hadn't turned mine off. No, that's okay. I spoke enough on the last question.
Okay. Mr. Cortes.
Yeah, as Rick stated earlier, these are like some of the important issues. This is why we run. It's how do you manage this money and keep West Hartford affordable? How do you negotiate it so the mill rate doesn't increase? And I think that we have to start looking at different ways and maybe get creative. I know the town manager does a great job at finding dollars that we can bring into the town. But we also need to look at maybe combining some of the service that we already have. A couple of years ago I talked about how the money that we use to pave our roads is different money than for our sidewalks. But I see you see potholes all over. Everybody complains about the potholes, but yet some of these sidewalks get replaced, and in my opinion don't need replacing. I had my sidewalk replaced a couple of years ago. Nothing wrong with it. There wasn't. So how are we more efficient with that? And I think that would help out with kind of keeping the budget, our budget in check and preventing from the mill rate increasing.
Anyone else on this question?
Yes, I'd like to jump in here, Carol. Thank you. Would you just repeat the question for me, please?
Excuse me, yes. What are your thoughts on the making a balance between providing services and controlling property taxes?
Thank you. So I think we've done a pretty good job at doing this. Oftentimes we talk about balancing, but in reality, it's really juggling, right? Because we have the services on one side and we want to keep our taxes affordable for our residents. But at the same time, we do not want to negate our resources, especially in our areas of public safety, where we know that's critical for providing services to our town residents, especially during this pandemic. So we've provided a number of resources to our health district and our assistant, why am I escaping her name? Director Kraus has done a fantastic job in collaborating both with our chief of police and our chief of fire. So when we look at these resources and we look at balancing our taxes, we also have to be responsible and make responsible decisions working with our professionals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Carol, if not, I have one from the audience.
Thank you. Go right ahead, Cassie.
All right, so this question is multifold, but it has to do with aging infrastructure in West Hartford. So I'm gonna try to wrap this into one question, but it's gonna be a few topics for you guys to decide to address. And do you have plans on upgrading existing structures or consolidating services? For example, it's been talked about having one high school in West Hartford. And along those lines, what about UConn, the West Hartford branch? It's been sitting there for a while. Do you have plans for that? And how would that benefit West Hartford? Thanks, Carol.
Thank you. And that question goes first to Mr. Cortes.
Thank you. So I'll try to break it down. Upgrading structures, absolutely important. We cannot keep, when you're looking, we need to look at what we have in West Hartford and how efficient some of these structures are operating. And if they're not very efficient, maybe look at, moving them around a little bit. Right now we have the same bridge of property. So what do we do with the Faxon Library? What do we do with the Elmwood Community Center? I'm opposed to the purchase of the same bridge of property. It's already in place. Because now we added something else. We became realtors in a time where might bite us in the butt down the road. We just got to be a little bit smarter with that. We can't keep dumping money on stuff. Maybe we can do repairs, but it has to make sense. The dollars have to add up. Because now we got the same bridge of property. we don't know what's in there. We don't know the abatement, the stuff we have to do to make it safe, bring everything up to code. There's a cost to all this, and I get it. If we fix something today, it's cheaper to do it today than tomorrow. So now let's not kick things down the road. In regards to the UConn property, I feel our hands are tied with that. It'd be nice to work with a developer and kind of see, how can we make another multi-use, property there? Like, let us be part of the conversation. We have the ball fields there. How can we integrate the community in there? So that's what I would like to see. A developer to work to sit down with us and come up with ideas to make it functional for the community. And I think we should get out of the real estate business. That it's not. We're not equipped for that. So now we're taking on more liabilities than we need right now. But we do need to ensure that we do have safe infrastructure. So yes, it is important, but if it's costing us money, there's some things we got to let go. And like I said earlier, we'll look at ways of combining service with what we have, but not combining schools, because you combine schools, now you end up picking winners, now, you look at the sports, it affects a lot, it affects the communities. So combining schools, for a town like us, what makes us is the two high schools. Those rivalries are important to the community piece, so we need to stop picking winners and start thinking about the community and really listening to see what the community wants. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Okay, Mr. Wenograd.
Yes, thank you. So on the St. Bridget's property, I'm very proud to have been part of the decision to buy that property. We ended up getting a great grant actually from the state, thanks to Representative Kate Farrar. We have bonding money for it, so actually the upfront costs are actually pretty low. But more than that, and it also just geographically fits in perfectly with Beachland Park. But more than that, it's part of a broader plan to exactly do the type of consolidation to increase services without increasing expenses. If we are able, we have dilapidated building, the Elmwood Community Center, and we have a youth center there. My colleague Liam Sweeney has been particularly vehement on talking about that. It's a closet, literally a old utility closet that we call a youth center. By getting rid of that property, right at this point, it's probably better suited to commercial use. We can actually get rid of that, sell it, develop it, and also replace it, and Faxon Library perhaps, and a senior center, bringing all that into a revitalized community center for all of Elmwood. I think it's an exciting project. It is an affordable project. And sometimes you have to be innovative. You have to not just, look at what we've got and say, okay, it's good and we'll keep on patching it. Sometimes you move forward. And I believe in this case, that's exactly what we've done. And there's a reason why we got support from Elmwood businesses, Elmwood neighbors. It's an investment in, really important part of town. The other thing, on the other issues, I don't support the consolidation of the schools. It's a creative idea. I don't like it, and don't think it'll work. And on the UConn property too, what Al said, we don't own it. We're hopeful the developers will come in with a plan we like. We still have some authority through zoning, and certainly our biggest priority is making sure we keep the fields. So once we get a plan in there, I'm sure we'll begin a lot of negotiation to really make it a development the whole town can be proud of. But again, we're at this point, we're waiting for the developer to tell us what they want to do with it.
Thank you, Mr. Wenograd. Mr. Bush. Mr. Bush.
All right, thanks. So I just like to throw out a couple of points. One, I definitely feel that it's not a great idea to go to one high school at this point. I think the rivalry between the two high schools is great. I have a lot of young children in my family, and I know that it's difficult enough to make a varsity sports team with two high schools. If there was only one, it would be almost impossible. And I think that the athletic experience for children is really a valuable thing for them to go through when they're growing up. And I think that one high school would not support a town of 60,000 people. I also completely support the purchase of St. Bridget's School. I've been a basketball coach for at least 9 years in town, coaching my sons and daughter. There's our indoor basketball facilities are woefully inadequate. I think that if we can use this new opportunity to help to expand indoor sports facilities, it would be fantastic for the town. Yukon property, and what a home run that could be if we could work with the developers on that. I mean, my personal vision would be to take the east side of Trout Brook and turn it into some, big indoor soccer, volleyball, lacrosse, type indoor sports facility with outdoor soccer fields, baseball fields. That would be just a home run. And if we could work to the zoning issue with real estate development, if we could consolidate the zoning on the other side, and I think currently it's zoned for single family homes. If we could change that. I was just in San Francisco, and it would be fantastic to do some ringed 3-story cool construction over there and use the natural waterscape to make it into a beautiful place for people to live. That could be incredible. So I think we should be in the real estate business. Real estate's they're not making any more of it. It's getting more expensive. The town of West Hartford is smart to make these investments in the short term and in the long term. We do have aging infrastructure, and it needs to be replaced eventually. And I think that we're on the right track. And those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes,
No
Carol.
hands?
I'd like-
Okay, Ms. Blanks.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. And I have said on the council meetings that the purchase of St. Bridget was a home run. And I do have a personal connection because my daughter attended that school. I think we are developing Elmwood, and many Elmwood residents, including myself, often feel that this area of town has been left unnoticed. All the other areas of town have been developed. I think this is a key opportunity that we have with St. Bridget School and what we're going to develop into that. It's abuts the park, and I just think about all the seasonal activities that we're going to have, not only for youth and people in the middle, but also our seniors, or I'd like to call them our mature population. We already have the Trout Brook Trail where we have walking. So this would just add to what is the possibilities are and what's available. In terms of the Yukon property, I know this has been a long-standing issue. What I'd like to see something there when it's developed is what it complements the community and the neighborhood, because boy, oh boy, those neighbors have had a time with that particular property. And I know we're working with our town professionals so that the owner of the property can get off their derriere and make sure that it's sold and we can get on with the business of developing it. And in terms of the high schools, I flatly disagree. I think the 2 high schools are important for our kids, and especially now during COVID, they need that. We talked about the rivalry. That's how they also make long-lasting friends between both high schools well into adulthood. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so the next question goes to Ms. Rodman. The digital life affects all of us in many of our aspects of life. The digital life affects all aspects of our life. Do the residents of our town have sufficient access to digital resources? Is there a role for the town council regarding that digital access?
So I have to say that I run my business digitally, and my kids are all obviously online, and especially during COVID, we did have access to it, but not everybody does. I do think the town has a responsibility to have free Wi-Fi access to everyone around, because you can't rely on private Wi-Fis or locked Wi-Fis. That's just how the world's working right now. And especially during COVID, when, like we were talking about, some of the seniors that are inside and they don't know how to do this. Not only having a plan to maybe teach them, or having a big brother, big sister, or little grandson or granddaughter help them work navigating. I definitely think that it's the responsibility of town council to make sure that everyone has digital access.
Thank you. Anyone else have a comment on digital access in the town? All right.
Carol, I'd like to respond.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Blank.
Thank you for the question, and absolutely. And not only digital access, Carol, but I also believe that we need to provide the education and not assume because they have access, they know how to use this technology. Also, we many times communicate through through technology, assuming that everyone has a computer or a smartphone or a smart device, and they have access to turn these smart devices on. And I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that everybody has accessibility, they are educated, and also look at collaboration. So collaboration between our young people and our seniors in terms of partnering with them and perhaps even recruiting volunteers, especially now to provide in some assistance. West Hartford is really good about utilizing folks who are retired and have this skill set and are more than willing and able to jump in and fill in some gaps where we as a town may fall short because of our resources. Thank you again for the question.
Thank you. Anyone else on this question? All right. The next question is going to go to Mrs. Blank. Your question is, West Hartford has quite a diversity of housing in the town. What is your thinking on the balance of affordable housing versus market rate housing in town? You can consider both rental and otherwise.
Yes, and again, good question, Carol. And yes, what we've done during my term of being on the council, we have looked at this issue, and we have actually, again, being responsible, have addressed this issue. I believe our previous panel, number 2 and number 1, talked about our One Park project that's going up and how we address this issue in terms of making sure that we have workforce housing. We are also have another project that's going up on Berkshire. We talked about having affordable housing. And when I talk about affordability versus workforce, we have to also remember our aging population. We have great teachers in our great schools, and some of them can't afford to live in town. So let's make it available and accessible. Many folks have said to me that, you know what, as I age, I may want to come out of my house and I may want to downsize into something smaller, but we have to be able to make it affordable. And this is a prime opportunity while we have many vacant spaces in town to take advantage of that. And in addition to that, we also had our accessible dwellings that Ben can talk more about that. So we have people who are aging, but they may want to stay at home, and this gives them an opportunity to do that. Thank you for the question once more.
Thank you. And someone else that would like to address this, Rick Bush.
Right.
Thank you.
Yep. So certainly affordable housing is something that that's been on everybody's mind lately as we're facing, the pandemic and the eviction moratorium in Connecticut. For 19 months now, tenants have been able to stay in their homes without paying rent to some degree. And the federal government has provided upwards of $400 million to subsidize the rental payments, which has been a huge, huge benefit to tenants. Not necessarily such a good deal for landlords. And I think the biggest problem with affordable housing at this point is that when you're relying on the public, public people, just investors and developers to build housing, it's extremely expensive. I mean, the taxes are very high. The cost of building is very high. The minimum wage has been raised up now to, it's $13, going to be $14 next year. It just creates a very difficult climate for people to build new housing. So, affordable housing is great if you can get subsidies from federal, state, or local government. I fully support subsidies if they're available for people. the tax break that was given to the developers at One Park, in my opinion, was a very, very good investment on the town's part. We offered them, it was a generous package, I think close to $1 million over 10 years. But if you look at the long-term benefit of that, as far as supporting local business in town, as far as bringing hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, at least 100,000 anyway, I don't know the exact number, but in perpetuity, we'll be getting tax benefits from that. So if the town of West Hartford would be willing to talk about lowering taxes on affordable housing for developers, or even providing vouchers for low-income citizens, I think that would be just a win for everybody.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak on this? Mr. Cortes. Mr. Cortes. You have to unmute yourself.
Thank you for that.
Unmute.
Am I unmuted? Can you hear me?
You're unmuted. I can hear you. Yes.
Thank you. So with affordable housing and market rate housing, or the workforce housing, I think we're doing good with the workforce housing. There's cranes up. We're seeing development. Berkshire Road, they gave two apartments or two townhouses that are going to be workforce housing on that 24, 26 housing development there. But we're not doing enough for affordable housing. I think it's extremely difficult because, the taxes are high in West Hartford. Property value is high also. So, that's pretty challenging. So how do we think outside the box? ADU solves a small problem, but, how do we make people feel successful? How do you make someone feel like they achieved that American dream and give them opportunities, to purchase a home in West Hartford? I know we have CFHA in place, maybe, educate people on getting some of the stuff so they become homeowners and feel more successful. So, I feel like there's a little bit more we can do. We're on the right track, but I think there's plenty of room to improve on that.
Thank you. Mr. Wenograd.
Thank you very much. And it is a big issue. And frankly, it's one where we have to do a lot of things. The accessory dwelling unit ordinance, I think, was a step in the right direction. We made it a bit easier for people to build. We gave people a right to build in-law apartments or whatever lots of different terms for it. That makes it, ability to get some rental income out of your property. It makes it easier to stay in your home, and it creates a unit that in itself is likely to be less costly and more affordable. So on both ends of that deal, it helps seniors age in place, but it also helps create a missing middle of affordable units. But there are a lot of other things we can do as well. Al's comment is correct. I mean, we want to get programs for more home ownership under the, it is a primary way to grow generational wealth in this country, and we want to make that available to as many people as possible. And it needs to be done in a way that helps people actually succeed, and certainly there are ways to do that. Zoning rules in general can have an impact on limiting supply. If we don't allow apartments to be built in certain areas, the result is that the ones that exist, are worth more and cost more. So to some extent, creating, supply and demand does actually work with rentals, I believe. And if you can create more apartments, even at various income levels, that will help moderate the prices. We have a great supply of sort of small a affordable, not controlled, but 3 families and 2 family homes. And that is a great asset for West Hartford. It creates a lot of our economic diversity. We need to protect those homes. We need to protect those small landlords who rent out 1 or 2 apartments, make it practical for them to keep their apartments as they are and keep them affordable. The last thing we know we have a huge demand of people who want to live in West Hartford, and wealthy people in particular who want to come. We need to provide housing stock for them. Things like Blueback, things like Steel Road or whatever else, even these sort of more higher end projects help with the supply side of the price equation as it, and can help keep prices moderate. So again, my biggest fear, frankly, is that we end up sort of an enclave and people start buying up properties and making them, luxury, increasing rents and forcing out really vibrant members of our community.
Thank you, Mr. Winograd. And let's see, Ms. Rodman, before we move to another question, would you like to chime in?
Sorry. Oh, one thing, that I'm hearing is, you want to create more people to come in here, more people to have places to live, but on the opposite end of the spectrum, the more people you come in is more of a drain on all the services that we currently have. So in the short term, you might be creating more affordable housing, but in the long term, it does weigh on our resources. So we would have to make sure that we would know how to deal with that with a greater increase of population.
Thank you. At this point, I would like to ask the timers to let us know how much time each of our candidates has left, or how much they've used up, whichever way you've been recording it. Mr. Pettijohn, are you ready?
Yes. Mr. Wenograd has probably just a little bit, about 30 seconds left. Ms. Blanks has about a little over, about a minute 45. Mr. Bush, about two minutes, a little over 2 minutes.
Okay. And Ms. Switek? Do you have any?
Yeah, I got it.
report?
Yes, Mr. Cortes has a minute 47 left, and Ms. Rodman has just about 6 minutes left.
All right, so Mr. Winograd has to be careful, but everybody else is in pretty decent shape. We can have, let's see, we have about 5 or 8 minutes to go with questions. So let's go on to the next question. And this one will go to Mr. Winograd. And if you want to answer it, that's fine. If you choose not to, that's okay too. Let me find a good one here. Or I should ask if we have any questions from the audience, Cassie.
So we do, but I'm going to phrase this differently. So the question is for the incumbents: what is your proudest accomplishment over the past 2 years? And then for those who are running for the first time, in 2 years, what do you want to see your proudest accomplishment be recognized as?
Okay, that's a comprehensive one. So, Mr. Winograd, what do you say?
Well, I'll give a quick one-liner. The accessory dwelling unit took me about 5 years of fighting and I got it done. So I'm proud of that one.
All right, very good. Thank you. And someone else who would like to talk about your vision here, really, and your accomplishment. Anyone?
I'll go. My proudest,
Okay, Ms. Blanks.
thank you. Proudest accomplishment is working with public safety and providing the necessary resources to address COVID during this pandemic to protect our students, residents, teachers, and all people in town.
Thank you. And Mr. Bush.
Yes, so even though I'm not an incumbent, I did participate in the process quite a bit over the last 2 years. And I've had at least one accomplishment that I'm very proud of, which was helping West Hartford to become educated and navigate through the integrated plan for the MDC, which is a plan to help separate the stormwater from the sanitary sewer. So I was integral in passing that legislation, and that was a very proud accomplishment.
Thank you. Let's see, so. Mr. Cortes, you have something that you have in your vision or accomplishment?
No, in my vision, I'm passionate about public safety. I'm on the civilian police. I'm currently on the civilian police review board in town, and that's something that I want to take part on is being able to help, our community feel safer. I feel that over the past year, like we've seen an increase on violent crimes in particular. And how can we work with our elected officials to address some of these issues, to feel safer in our communities?
All right, thank you. And Ms. Rodman.
So not being an incumbent, I have been very active in West Hartford since I've lived here. Being PTO president over at King Philip Middle School, I have kids in college now. They went through the public school system. I still have a daughter at KP, and the education in West Hartford is absolutely amazing, and we need to keep it that way. We need to make sure we have a safe schools for our kids. It's very inclusive. It's amazing. Like, I wish my schools had been like that growing up. And, I wasn't born in West Hartford, but now I feel like this is the only place I ever want to live. And to be honest, during the pandemic and during COVID, we had a lot of time with my kids being home. They were all sent home from college. And we built this pandemic backyard. And I have this vision of West Hartford being kind of like the backyard that everyone wants to go to during vacations. And I want my kids to come home from college and want to live here. I want to grow old here. I want my grandkids to come here. And that's my vision. I want to volunteer. I want to help West Hartford be better and be the place that everyone wants to come home to. And what I can do in 2 years, I'd like to find out. So that's my vision.
Thank you. Next question is going to go to Mr. Bush first. And I am turning to waste disposal. We didn't ask this question already. I have so many questions here, I can't remember. So waste disposal, what is your vision, or what do you think is a good approach for recycling in West Hartford? We'll start with Mr. Bush.
All right, so, recycling, I think, is sort of it's a feel-good issue. We used to get paid by China to take all our recycled plastics, and it was a money-making endeavor. And now it's no longer that. We actually have a disposal problem. I think obviously the idea of recycling is good. And if you do enough research on it, though, you kind of become disenchanted with it, and you realize that it's really more of a burden than it is a panacea. And so I'm a little bit jaded by it. I think if we can figure out ways to reduce the cost of it, and we can figure out ways to reduce the cost of our garbage disposal and our recycling, it would be beneficial to all the residents of the town. But currently, I don't see a great solution.
Thank you. Anyone else on waste removal, recycling?
I can continue talking about PFAS. You had asked that question earlier, the PFCs in the water, if you want me to spend a minute on that.
That was the next question coming up. If no one else wants to talk about waste, okay, go right ahead, Mr. Bush.
All right, so I'm definitely a plumbing junkie. I enjoy all things water and sewer for whatever reason. I'm not sure why, but so the issue is PFCs. It's actually the more colloquial term is called PFAS, and it's found in Teflon and Gore-Tex, and they're called forever chemicals, and they are penetrating into our wastewater. West Hartford is very, very fortunate because we are served by the MDC, and we have a protected watershed. So there is currently no PFCs or PFAS in our drinking water, but it is in our wastewater, and it comes from industrial discharges and from the Hartford landfill, and it is a problem. The only way to get rid of it is to burn it. Many years ago, the MDC invested a significant sum in large incinerators. So we're uniquely suited, the MDC is uniquely suited to help to dispose of the PFAS through these incinerators. And actually, we could regionalize that service and allow other municipalities to benefit from the incinerating capacity of the MDC. So that's a quick answer about that, but I did want to make sure that I was able to get that in.
Okay, and since you have introduced, and it is kind of a waste material, right? I mean, it's something that flows that shouldn't be in our water. Others in the group, you're welcome to address this in a way that works for you. If you have any comments on those chemical things and how they should be managed. All right, then I will go to what is probably our last question here. If there are any changes to voting procedures, and the state legislature has started to work on this in the last couple of years, do you think the resources are in place to implement any costs associated with any changes, such as no excuse absentee balloting? And what is the role of the council in helping to answer this? And this goes to Mr. Cortes.
Hi, thank you for that question. I think the changes now make a little more sense. Last year we sent ballots out to everyone, and there's a cost to that, whether it comes from a local level, state level, or federal level, that's, a cost that comes to us. I don't want to deny anybody the right of voting. I really enjoy, voting in our house is a big deal. I can't wait till my kids get old enough to vote. My oldest, he's 22. Every election is important. So giving access to voting is important. As far as a cost to it, I think the way we're looking at it now is probably the right way. Is, if you want an absentee ballot, you request an absentee ballot, and make it accessible. The concern is for those that don't have access to technology, are we reaching out to them? How can we let them know that this is an option that's available, especially now during COVID? I know that we're still kind of under the COVID guidelines, so you can check off COVID-19 to get an absentee ballot. So that's the answer to that.
Thank you very much. And anyone else? Ms. Rodman? I thought I saw your hand. There you go.
Yes. So, I mean, I have kids in college. They have to vote by absentee ballot. Last year, obviously, was a unique situation. However, when you think about it, if you're going to get more people voting, if you actually are able to do absentee ballots, then that might be a better solution, because then you'd have more of the population of West Hartford be able to vote and get a better sense of what the community needs, rather than only the people that can actually get to the polls. Now, I love going to the polls. I always take my kids. Voting is an important part of living in this country, because everyone can vote. I have a background in political science, and so that is a major issue. But I do think that having unrestricted absentee ballots is a fantastic idea. I think it would just give voting to more people.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Carol, I'd like to
Ms. Blanks?
Thank you for the question. And yes, I think this is essential. If the pandemic taught us anything else, it is that we need to keep each other safe and be able to exercise our right to vote. And just with the last election cycle, the number of volunteers that were garnered was an extraordinary organized process in order to make that happen. And I do know that our state delegation works very well with the town council, and also grants are also available so that we can garner the necessary resources to make this happen going forward. This may be the way that we go going forward in order to keep everybody safe, especially since the pandemic continues to mutate.
Thank you.
The virus, I'm sorry.
And Mr. Bush, did I see your hand up? Mr.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Wenograd, and then Mr. Bush. Okay. All right,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Wenograd.
The resources will be there. There's no higher priority than ensuring that democracy works. So we have to. There's no choice. and we'll come up with the money. It's that important.
Thank you. Mr. Bush.
Yeah, just one quick comment, and I think I'm surprised more people aren't opposed to the early voting. I know as a candidate, you spend a lot of money in your campaign and you work very hard to time your marketing and to time your message that goes out to the voters. And when you have too much early voting, not absentee balloting, but early voting, I think it takes away from the campaigning process and I think it's an unfair. I do not support early voting, but I do support absentee ballots.
Thank you. Any other final comments? Everybody all set? Okay. Then this ends this section of the discussion. We will move now to your closing statements. The timers will be on for 2 minutes. And we will be going in this order. I'll read the order. Ms. Blanks, Ms. Rodman, Mr. Cortes, Mr. Bush, Mr. Wenograd. So Mrs. Blanks, you get to go with your closing statement.
I want to thank WHCI and the League of Women Voters of Greater Hartford for hosting this debate. And again, to you, Carol, for being the moderator. As a health professional and town councilor, I know what our town experienced, the challenges we faced, fear and loss of far too much. Moreover, it was my responsibility to keep residents and town employees safe and mitigate the spread of COVID-19. My first term was met with challenges, but my experience as a health professional, former board chair, prepared me to address COVID-19 issues as chair of public safety and to collaborate with town staff to mobilize resources. These resources were used to protect town employees, our district staff, students, and business owners as well as residents. At the top of the pandemic, resources were allocated to test everyone. When vaccines were available, our job and duty were to vaccinate everyone to mitigate further risk and aiming for a new normal. 2020 was also explosive with the murder of George Floyd, who was captured on a cell phone by a teenager. This crime and tragedy placed a spotlight on racial injustices experienced in African-American communities. Supporters from all walks of life around the world demonstrated for months to shine a light on Black Lives Matter, including our own town's high school students, town residents, which I fully supported. I was proud to initiate a plan with Town Manager Hart, Chief Riddick, and his town team of professionals to create the Police Civilian Review Board as one of many outcomes from the Police Accountability Bill. I am proud this council enhanced essential services to keep our town safe and affordable. I am running for my second term to continue what I started. Growth in West Hartford, vibrant and safe community for all people. I am Carol Anderson Blanks. Re-elect me for town council, incumbent and Democrat. On Tuesday, November 2nd, vote row A for the entire team, where we are responsible, responsive, and ready to address all issues. Stay safe.
Thank you very much. And next, Ms. Rodman.
Well, thank you for having me. This is my first time running for town council. And I have to say that I'm honored to be part of a Connecticut party. It has all the ideals that I've been thinking of and had nowhere to kind of express them. So I'm in very good company in running for the slate with Rick, Mark, and Lee. And to be honest, I own a business in town. I volunteered in Little League. Like I said, I'm the PTO president over at KP. I have kids who went through the public school system. I know what it's like to live and work in town. And I like volunteering my time. I like talking to people. I like making West Hartford a great place to live. And if I could be of service doing it on town council, I would love the opportunity to do so. I think I represent a wide variety of people that do in fact live here. And I would just really like the opportunity to work within the community that I love living in. And if you would give me your vote, my name is Roni Rodman. If you vote on November 2nd, if you vote for me, I would absolutely love it. More importantly, I would love for you to vote. And like I said before, I want to make West Hartford the place where my kids and my grandkids want to keep coming back and want to live. And that's it. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rodman. And next we have Mr. Cortes, Alberto Cortes.
Thank you, Carol, and the League of Women Voters and WHCI. I'm running because I'm passionate about our town. I do not forget where I come from or the struggles I've had to get to where I'm at. I want more for my family and for this community. I've been in public servant for over 20 years, and I would love the opportunity to earn your vote on November 2nd so that I can serve this wonderful community we live in. Not only will I do the work that comes with being on town council, but I will take the time to listen to the residents of West Hartford and give a voice to those that have not been heard in the past, because we are a one West Hartford. I will participate in dialogue to help create solutions, especially those that have been ignored in the past. As a former corrections officer, public safety is important to me, and I think it's important to everyone. But however, years of bad policies at the state level has put our town in a vulnerable position for crime. West Hartford residents are repeatedly victims of car burglaries. I would do everything I can if elected to ensure that our police department has the proper resources to address the increase in crime, especially from the support from the state level. I will ensure that all our schools, no matter what neighborhood it is in, have the necessary resources to perform at the same level. The only way I can do this is with your help. So on November 2nd, vote for me, Alberto Cortes, and vote for Row B. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cortes. And now Mr. Bush.
Very good. Thanks to Jennifer Evans and West Hartford Public TV, and to the League of Women Voters and Carol Mulready for this outstanding annual tradition. It's amazing. When I first ran for office, I was very naive about how these debates were put together. I just assumed incorrectly that the town would somehow organize it, but I came to realize that this debate is presented by a volunteer organization for the benefit of the voters. It's a testament to the impact of volunteer organizations and how citizen participation is integral to the success of every small town. When you start to look at local politics, you realize that it is just an amalgamation of concerned, motivated volunteers who actually care enough about their town that they donate their time, energy, and brain power to help make our community a better place to live. The more involved you get, the more you see that local politics are not just about being elected to the town council, but about citizens becoming educated about the issues and then applying their specializations to help solve problems. As a citizen, my testimony was instrumental in helping to pass a vote to allow participation in the MDC's integrated plan to help separate stormwater from the sanitary sewer, which was passed with bipartisan support 9-0. As a member of the Conservation Committee, I'm involved in monthly discussions ranging from electric school buses to clean biofuels to solving rat problems to increasing the bottle deposit. As a commissioner of the MDC, I have helped dozens of town residents to understand and deal with basement flooding and sewer surcharges. As an independent candidate of a Connecticut party, I will not be forced to toe a party line, but will bring my moderate conservative viewpoint to the table during every discussion. If I'm elected, I promise to do my homework, to understand the issues, to continue my work on behalf of the residents of West Hartford, specifically on the stormwater and sanitary sewer separation. And I will make myself available to meet and listen to residents and then work together with town leaders to solve problems. My name is Rick Bush.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bush. And last but not least, Mr. Wenograd.
Thank you. I'd like to begin by thanking WHCI and the League of Women Voters for hosting this event and for all you do to promote democracy. As many of you know, I'm a son of a lifelong League member, and I'm very proud to work with you. And thanks to all the candidates here in this forum for your service and potential service to our town, particularly my partner tonight, Carol Blanks. And I'd like to thank the voters of West Hartford for the honor of serving on the West Hartford Town Council for the past 6 years, and once again ask for your support. This past year and a half were some of the most difficult times our town has ever faced, but we all rose together as a community to meet the challenge. Our town responded like few others, handing out masks and food, setting out mobile vaccination units for homebound residents, and creating online systems to serve our residents despite the closure of Town Hall. We were among the first to close down streets for our restaurants, creating an energy and vibrancy I doubt we'll ever want to give up. After 4 years of trying, as you've heard, working with my colleagues and town staff, advocacy groups, and national experts, I passed one of the strongest accessory dwelling unit ordinances in the state that will both help keep West Hartford affordable and enable seniors to stay in their homes. We are moving forward with new environmental initiatives like increasing pedestrian and bike-friendly streets and enacting our comprehensive clean energy plan. Our town's finances continue to be strong. We made major strides in securing fiscal stability by addressing our underfunded pension. We did not do so by slashing benefits or using gimmicks, but with strong and prudent action. I'm excited by our efforts to expand services in Elmwood and replace the outdated community center and library. I believe I still have a valuable role to play in protecting and improving West Hartford's quality of life, our diversity, our educational system, and our sense of community. I hope you will honor me with that opportunity and support the rest of our Democratic team on row A. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wenograd, and to all the candidates. I really appreciate, and the league appreciates, the work that you do, and ask you to enjoy as much as you can the rest of your campaigning. We thank everyone that's been involved to make this a success, this effort with our wonderful public access channel. To the public, we hope that this debate assists you when you go to the polls on Election Day, November 2nd, or vote by absentee ballot. As mentioned previously, there are 3 town council debates. There's also 1 Board of Education debate coming up. It will be scheduled for Tuesday, the 28th. Be sure to check all of them during the month of October if you have not, if you did not see all of them. They will be on the WHCTV.org system. You may see it by YouTube from their YouTube channel. You can also see it by clicking on the various options that they have at WHCTV. So please get to know your candidates and exercise your right to vote. And then do remember to check the League of Women Voters website, vote411.org. You simply insert your address and you can see all of these candidates with their bios and with a response to 3 written questions. So thank you very much for watching. Make sure you vote, and thanks again to our candidates. Good night.
Thank you.